we're going to go ahead and get started here. And I
Okay.
thank you guys for joining us today. And for those who are going to be watching later on our YouTube channel, welcome. Today we are here for a hearing education journey with Bruce Burkhart and Jennifer Hetzel, and they work for Hearing Health Associates. I kind of feel like little or less attention is given to hearing until issues arise. And really, there's a lot of preventative measures that we can take to maintain our hearing and prevent hearing loss, which might be unnecessary. So I was really excited that Bruce and Jennifer could join us today and educate us on this topic that is very interesting to me. A little bit about these two in alphabetical order. Bruce, he was raised and has spent most of his life in Kansas City. He retired from the pharmaceutical industry in 2021 after working for various companies and selling various drugs for 30 years. He started at Hearing Health Associates in August of 2021 in a marketing capacity, giving educational hearing talks to senior resident centers, senior health centers, churches, basically anyone who would listen to the importance of having their hearing examined on a regular basis. Bruce and his wife moved to Lee Summit a little less than a year ago from Kansas City, and he is the father of 4 and grandfather of 6. So welcome, Bruce.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes. And Jennifer Hetzel. She's a doctor of audiology. She has her doctorate in audiology. She is originally from the south suburbs of Chicago and came to Kansas City in 2002. She has been an audiologist for 28 years, primarily in the ENT setting, which is the ear, nose, and throat setting. She has been with Hearing Health Associates since January of 2020. Jennifer enjoys helping her patients find just the right hearing solution for their needs and lifestyle without spending any more money than necessary, which I think we can all appreciate that. When she's not poking in ears, she likes to play in local community bands and help her husband grow their home-based 3D printing business, which I have no clue. I can't even imagine what that is, but I would love to check it out. She is also the mother of a Dean's List college student and an academic lettered high school student. So we got some brains over there. So again, welcome to both of you. And I am going to go ahead and give you the floor. I do have the Q&A opened and also the chat room. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to throw them in there. And we will forward those over to Bruce and Jennifer. All right,
Great.
guys.
Thanks for having us, Jody. First of all, we really appreciate this opportunity.
Sure.
As I said, I'm Bruce, or as you said, I'm Bruce Burkhart. We're gonna talk today about hearing health, hearing loss, some common diseases that kind of coincide with hearing loss, and ways to help that. One of the things about this is that I'll bore you with just a few statistics here. It's prevalent, as everyone knows, I'm sure. There's like 48 million people, at least, that have some form of hearing loss. And over 50 million, more than that, actually have what we call tinnitus or tinnitus, however you want to pronounce the word, which we're going to go in depth with in a little bit here. Hearing loss is very insidious. You know, a lot of times it's like losing your eyesight. And my little anecdote there is, with regard to that, is that in, let's say, 2009, I had LASIK vision done, correction, and I went to the eye doctor for a while. 2011 was the last time I was at the eye doctor. I retired from active work in 2021, and in that 10 years, you know, out of sight, literally out of mind. So I didn't think anything of it. Right after I retired, I realized that, by golly, I'm getting a little splotchiness in one of my eyes. So I go back for the first time in 10 years, and sure enough, my vision had changed for the worse, getting older. I'm developing cataracts, and I was diagnosed with glaucoma. So, gosh, you do the right thing and you get get yourself fixed up. And now I've got some glasses that I use for traveling, and driving, and putting them on was like, oh my gosh, first time I put glasses on when I was about 14, 15 years old. I couldn't believe what I was missing. And it's been a great thing in terms of the quality of my life. So that's kind of how you can lose your hearing. It's very insidious, like I said, can happen very slowly over time. And I gave you just a couple of quick statistics here, but one of the saddest ones I can give you, really, I hate to do this, but it's sad, and that is on average, people wait about 7 years before they realize hey, I've got to get this fixed. People can tell them they have issues. They can maybe realize they have issues, but they wait on average about 7 years or maybe never, address that issue. And the recurrent thing that I want to promote here is the importance of getting your hearing examined. That's very important. And it's been proven clinically time and again in studies that if your hearing is deficient and you're corrected, it gets corrected, your mood and your memory get better. And of course, that's a great increase in the quality of one's life. So it's important. It's important to get hearing examined. And I know we're talking to a crowd that's like myself, has maybe a couple of years on them. And, by golly, it's probably time if you haven't had your hearing checked. So let's start by saying most of the people that start having hearing loss, it starts in under 65 years old. 1 in 3 people over 60 have some form of hearing loss. That's quite a bit. Even 1 in 5 teenagers, they have some form of hearing loss. And I, having kind of come into my own, I guess you'd say in the 70s, I was of the generation that would, go to rock concerts or put the headphones on. And, those are things that aren't going to necessarily help. So I want to touch base now on just maybe a couple of symptoms people may be having. This is not a hearing test. It can't take the place of a hearing test, but ask yourself, maybe those who are listening, like just a couple of questions. Number one, do you find yourself leaning in when you're talking with people? Are you asking people to repeat what they said quite a bit? Do people seem to be mumbling to you? Do you yourself get accused of mumbling? Because many times we mirror back behavior that we hear or get. Okay. Are you turning the TV up a lot in front of other people or asking it to be turned up a lot? Again, that's not a hearing test, but it's something to keep in mind because I'm a big advocate in the fact that everyone, particularly us seniors, should be getting a regular hearing exam. So your quality of life can really be compromised here, and you could be doing much better by getting a hearing examination and getting it addressed. Testing is the key. Again, quality of life here is at stake. So it's a big deal. It really is, and we don't realize it a lot of times. What causes this? What causes your hearing to go south? Like I just mentioned in my case with my eyes, it's very insidious. It takes place over years. I was fine after my LASIK surgery in 2009. In fact, I think I was a little better than 2020, believe it or not. And that went south over the years. So it's important to be on top of these exams. Sensorineural hearing loss. That is the most common. It takes place in the cochlea, which is the nerve center of your ear. Cochlea is located in the inner ear. You probably know, and I'm not going to get technical. I'll let Doc get technical. But your ear has 3 parts to it: the inner, the middle, and the outer. Okay. And the cochlea is kind of what makes it all happen. So the number one cause, and people are maybe wondering, what causes this? The number one cause of hearing loss is exposure to loud noise. Okay. Think of a Chiefs game. They take a lot of pride in how loud it can get at Arrowhead Stadium. They've got their decibel reader, 120 decibels. Well, you know what? You can lose your hearing at 120 decibels. There's a lot of confounding factors there, like where your baseline is, how old you are, what kind of exposure you've had. But it's gotten as high as 142. So if you've been exposed to loud noise by your work, I don't know, maybe, riding a motorcycle a lot, construction, jackhammers, things like that, just a lot of loud noise, that's really a risk factor. As well, the number 2 cause of hearing loss is, believe it or not, natural aging. We're all doing that. And that's just a matter of body parts wearing out, just like anything else. I'm talking to an audience that can relate to that, I'm sure, as I can. We're just doggone it getting older, and it happens. My bride is of 40 years, had to have both her hips replaced, and she's not even as old as I am. But body parts do wear out. Some of that is genetics for whatever reason, but she's got that taken care of and she's doing well now. So another cause of hearing loss, we're talking exposure to noise, natural aging, believe it or not, is medications. There are some medications that can cause hearing loss, acute or chronic medications. I think one of the biggest ones that I see or that I have experienced is ibuprofen, acetaminophen, the pain relievers. I have noticed that if I take a full day's course of that stuff, the ringing, and we'll talk about tinnitus here in a while, that can really have a factor. I can hear the ringing at the end of the day. And that's pretty tough. Other drugs, I'm just going to mention a couple here because there's over 200. Some of the drugs are fine on and of themselves, but some of them you combine them with something else and then you get an issue. They could be chronic. Cancer drugs can sometimes cause hearing loss. Some antibiotics can. Some diuretics can. Blood pressure meds can. That can be a factor. And you combine some of these things and it can make a kind of a nasty storm that can cause you to have some issues. So it's a big deal. It's something we need to be aware of. Head injuries. We know of people, believe it or not, back in my day when I was a kid, I used to play, I played football like everybody else. And man, if I got smacked in the head, this is weird. I used to hear music for just a couple of seconds. And of course, back in my football days, I'd always said, I was small, but I was slow. And I knew that probably wasn't where I was going to make a living. So I quit that after a while. But yeah, I used to, head injuries can cause some hearing loss. Now, I want to hit on also some of the things that maybe we're dealing with as senior citizens that are comorbidities and can, coincide with this thing. Here, I want you to think blood flow, okay? Think blood flow. The cochlea, remember your brain, your nerve center in your inner ear is very sensitive to blood flow. So if you have some blood flow issues, which are common, more common than not in some of us seniors, we're talking heart disease, high blood pressure. Diabetics, believe it or not, have a twice as likely chance to have some hearing loss than the population at large. If you have a kidney issue, you have some issues with your kidneys, they're at a 43% greater chance of having some form of hearing loss. Okay? A lot of things can be in play here. There's 2 diseases that I want to really hit on here, 2 conditions I really want to hit on that are common. Number 1 that go with hearing loss. Number 1 is depression. Okay. Many times, if you're out with some people and you get the talking and they're always going, huh? And they're telling you need to get your hearing checked. Come on, what's wrong? Are you okay? Sometimes that can wear on your nerves. And many times the natural reaction there is to, by golly, just maybe avoid that. Avoid those crowds, avoid those people, could be your family even. And when you start doing that, you start to self-isolate, okay? And then things can spiral down, and we don't want that. That's something that can be taken care of. That really can. That's some good news here. So if there's some depression, somebody that's got a little depression, maybe a lot of depression, sometimes they seem down, check, ask about the hearing thing. Another one, this is a big one, is Alzheimer's and dementia. Here, I want you to think of your brain as a muscle. We know that our heart's a muscle and has to be exercised. In fact, I'll give you a little anecdote here. It's kind of funny. My grandfather of happy memory died in like 1969. But I remember my mom saying when he was in, I want to say his late 50s, early 60s, he was in his, I think, late 50s, early 60s when he had a heart attack. Well, he had to sell his car as a result of that. Why? Because his car had a stick shift. And believe it or not, they thought that having a stick shift was too much of exertion after you had a heart attack, too post MI. That seems crazy these days. Now, if you have a heart attack, they get you up and walking and moving around pretty darn quick afterwards. But they thought having a car with a stick shift would be too much exertion. So he had to sell it, get a car with an automatic. He thought the world had come to an end. He was very unhappy with that. So that just shows you kind of how much things have changed and how we now know that our brain is a muscle. And if we're not hearing, we're not processing, our brain's not processing. And because of that, we kind of tend to punch out a little bit. So that's where hearing can really help. Getting your hearing examined, getting it fixed can really help with those kinds of disease state. 40% faster decline in if you have a hearing loss, dementia to Alzheimer's. It's a tough deal. Balance and safety. Even mild hearing loss has been associated with a 3 times greater chance, of falling. Your equilibrium is off a little bit. You're at a greater risk for falling. Smokers, not too many people our age smoke anymore, I wouldn't think, but they're at a greater risk. Again, blood flow. Think anything that's got a blood flow, and those issues become more important as we age. We start to have more of those kind of blood flow issues. So please keep that in mind. Now I want to hit on real quickly some uncommon forms of hearing loss. All right. These are things that aren't, generally speaking, aren't your garden variety sensorineural hearing loss. There's a thing out there called SIN. See, don't worry, I'm not the preacher today. SIN stands for speech in noise. Okay. What that means is studies have been done that have found of 10 people who test normal hearing on a standard audiology test, there'll be 3 people that'll have such a hard time with regard to hearing with background noise going on that it'll affect their life, their quality of life. Honestly, I think everybody has this to one degree or another. I know I do, and I think it's getting worse. I'll say that. I remember being at my nephew's wedding about a year ago, and of course, nice big round tables. You all have been there. Right up on the stage where the band was playing, and I was sitting as close to whoever was sitting next to me as I am to Jennifer, and just screaming and just being frustrated and saying, let's go in the back. Let's get out of here. If you're in a situation where you're exposed to that background noise, that type of thing, that's an issue that can really be tough, and it can affect your quality of life. And that's why it's important to have that taken care of. Sudden hearing loss is another one. And by the way, there are hearing aids that can adjust for speech and noise. Sudden hearing loss. We had someone that worked for us at Hearing Health Associates, and he woke up. You remember Doug? He woke up one morning and 80% of his hearing was gone. 80%, didn't do anything different, wasn't exposed to anything. He just woke up and he lost a big part of his hearing, 80% about, in one ear. Well, of course, he went to the ENT office, as he should, did brain scans, all that type of thing. And honestly, I remember Doug telling me that they never did find out exactly what the issue was. They never knew. He got hearing aids. He's doing better, but it was a thing. I mean, talk about scary. What do we do for that? Okay. What I would say is if you or a loved one experience that, the main thing is to get to the ER as soon as possible. Time is of the essence. We're pretty sure that could be a situation where you've got a virus of some kind going on. And if you get some corticosteroids, some steroids in you, that my understanding is many times a good part, maybe some, maybe all, it depends upon the situation and, kind of relative, given confounding factors here, hearing can return. But the main thing is get it addressed as soon as possible. So untreated ear infections, that's another thing that can cause hearing loss. I knew someone who manages a senior healthcare center, and she said when she was growing up, she was always getting ear infections. She says, and I don't know if she was just throwing a number out there or exactly what, that she must have had 20 sets of ear tubes put in her ear. Like I said, I don't know if that was a exaggeration or she's throwing a number out or what, but they were happening a lot. But she said she got to the point where she didn't even know if she had an ear infection. And then you can imagine what that does. She lost her hearing. But there was good news here because she ended up getting the cochlear implants and she's doing fine now. But that's a tough situation. The hearing kind of just went, because of the ear infections. Now, if you're going to also, I want to hit on another one that if you're going to have a form of hearing loss, this is the kind to have. Wax buildup. Wax should be considered our friend, okay, because it keeps our ears clean. It's really not a bad thing in and of itself. Some people have a proclivity to build up more wax than others, obviously in their hearing, in their ears, I should say. And in that situation like that, many times that can be addressed by just going to a primary care doctor and getting a ear canal. Oh gosh, what do they call them? Just a simple procedure. And
irrigation.
Pardon?
Irrigation.
Irrigation. Thank you, Jody.
You're
Irrigation done. That's the best kind of hearing loss you can have because you can walk out of there. Your equilibrium can be improved. Your hearing can be improved. That's a nice thing. If you're going to have hearing loss, that's the kind you want. Also, wax can build up on hearing aids. That's something we can take care of, and we can go into that in a minute too. So now I want to talk a little bit about tinnitus, what that is, okay, because that's a huge problem. It's bigger. More people have that and deal with that than they do garden variety hearing loss. Tinnitus is defined as a subjective noise that you hear that no one else around you can hear, okay? Usually it takes the form of ringing. It's kind of a constant ringing in your ears, and it can be terrible. I had another audiologist once tell me that she has heard of people who have actually been known to commit suicide, sad to say, because of this. You all probably know or have heard of the famous painter Vincent van Gogh, who allegedly cut off one of his ears. We don't know for sure, obviously, but that there's a chance that a lot of people speculate that tinnitus was driving him literally crazy. And he was using that painting as kind of an outlet. It can be devastating. It really can. And the thing that's tough here is that it doesn't have to be. It certainly can be addressed. We cannot make your hearing with regard to everything like it was when you were like 18 years old, but we can certainly improve your hearing and we can help your quality of life. And that's what we try to do. So what causes this? The things that cause tinnitus are the same things that cause regular hearing loss. Exposure to loud noise. Say a veteran, veterans who've been in combat, they're really exposed to it a lot. Natural aging. I'm raising my hand here because I'm hearing ringing more than often, a little bit more than I used to. And it can be a tough thing. Head injuries, those types of things. Same thing that causes hearing loss can cause tinnitus. Many times they go together. What are some of the triggers? There are some things that can acutely trigger tinnitus, and these can be addressed. Smoking, okay, alcohol, all right, some drugs. I mean, I've raised my hand there. Like I said, if I take ibuprofen for a full day's course, then, yeah, I'll hear that ringing. Diets many times, high in sugar, high in salt. Sometimes they can affect your ears in a ringing way. TMJ, and I never can remember exactly. It is the clicking that you might hear in your jaws. You remember what?
Temporomandibular joint.
Thank you. Okay. I had that once and it went away on its own and it was a nuisance. God, it was a nuisance. I must have had it for 3 days or so. Many people that get that can also get the ringing in their ears. One of the things that I think's triggered for me is sleep deprivation. That's an acute trigger for tinnitus. Anxiety, stress, okay. Like my bio said, we just moved to Lee Summit last May, and we had 2 houses there for a while, and it took us a little longer to sell that first house. That was stressful. And yeah, I think my ringing in my ears went up. Who would have guessed? Sometimes weather changes can cause the tinnitus too, but there's a lot of acute triggers. Okay. The effects can be devastating. Like I said, depression, golly, sleep disruption, your cognitive ability is compromised, obviously, because, how can you think and focus while, you've got this ringing in your ears? Stress in relationships. Good news, bad news here. The bad news is we can't make your hearing like it was before tinnitus came about. The good news is we can really help you with regard to an improvement in your life. There are hearing aids that do that. 90%, 85% of the people that have tinnitus also have some form of hearing loss. So that means 10 or 15% don't necessarily have hearing loss that have tinnitus. So what do we do about that? The 15%? Many times it's a matter of focus. It's a mind thing. Okay. A couple of examples. One of my audiologists, I think it was this one here. You might have told me the story of somebody who was a audiologist, and they would go out jogging and the ringing would start. So what they do is they would change directions. They would give their mind something else to cope on, to focus on. Vincent van Gogh, I would suggest maybe he was a great painter. And again, I don't know if he had tinnitus, but he did cut off his ear, he would, I think, use painting to focus. Okay. Maybe he got some relief, but it wasn't enough, obviously. I knew a lady who had a 8 or 9-year-old son, and this was kind of a sad story. I don't know what became of it, but her son would start getting the ringing in her ears. So she bought him an aquarium, and she said, when the ringing starts, go over to that aquarium and focus on those fish just kind of swimming around, and you would hear the bubbles from the oxygen thing. Okay. Gives you something else to focus on. It's like white noise. Our kids growing up, we never know what white noise is, but it's something to distract little kids, babies, while they're sleeping, to help them get to sleep. Hearing aids are made in such a way in these days that if you have tinnitus and hearing loss, they can be adjusted to help out in that regard. They really can. So there is hope. There is hope. Now I want to hit on real quick also some things to help you maintain your hearing. Because most likely most of us here have slipped a little bit, but there's some things that you can do to kind of help the hearing that you still have left. Number one, and again, beating that drum, please get your hearing examined, regular screenings. That's the best way. If we can get a baseline on you, that's good news, because if you come back in a year or two, then we can see where you were. We can adjust things from there. Maintain your hearing aids, like your car. It's like an appliance almost. It's got to be serviced. Okay. They do wear out a little bit. There's some things that happen there. So maintain your hearing aids. They can always be adjusted. Keep the earwax out of your ears. Earwax tends to accumulate on hearing aids too. Okay. That's why maintaining them is so important. Hearing protection, if you know you're going to be in an area or go out or be exposed to a lot of loud noise, you can always wear hearing protection, okay? And kind of muffle that noise the best as you can. Lastly, diet. And good news, bad news, there's not a food out there, like carrots. My understanding is that's not just an anecdotal thing now. There's studies that carrots do improve your eyesight. But there's not a food that I know of that can improve your hearing. Having said that, the general rule of thumb here is when you're eating, if it tastes good, spit it out. I mean, let's face it. Isn't that great? No. But no, think of oxygenated blood, okay, going to your heart, the cochlea, things like that. And you know where those come from. Those come from things like fruits, vegetables, salmon, those kinds of foods. The ones that maybe aren't that much fun, but, they can help. They can help and maintain. They can't really help you get your hearing better, but they can help you maintain your hearing as it is now. So oxygenated, rich food going to different parts of your body. The stuff that's good, let's say food-wise for your heart, is going to also be good for your ears. So now I want to hit on real briefly here. When we go out, and again, I'm always beating the drum. Let's get our hearing checked. Okay. What to look for. All right. There's several things because we want to be good consumers. I want everybody to be a good consumer. I try to be a good consumer. Sometimes I fail. I don't know. I'm kind of impulsive. I don't know. But first thing to be a good consumer is ask questions. Okay. Always call and ask questions. There are certain things I think you should be aware of, that are a little that I'm not comfortable with. I get the thing from the mail from, some of these places, and they'll say sale on hearing aids, $9.99.99, come in today. Well, those particular hearing aids may be more than you need. They may be less than you need. It's all about getting you into their place to get a hearing exam like I'm trying to do here. But they may try to sell you hearing aids you don't need. I don't know. I'm just a little leery of those. The commercial TV, internet offerings, be wary of those. A couple things. First thing, call and ask questions. Make sure that your hearing exam, and it really should be a covered benefit on your insurance. There's no question. Your insurance should cover in 99.999. I hesitate to say never or always in dealing with insurance companies because let's face it, there's always 1 in a million exceptions. And with my luck, I'll get that. But it should be a covered benefit. It really should. So your hearing exam shouldn't cost you anything. That's good news. Another thing that's huge, okay, and I think this is big, and that is ask if the audiologists are incentivized. Because if they are incentivized versus if they are not, that's going to change the whole patient client dynamic. They're going to have a little bit more incentive, to kind of push hearing aids on you. That's a factor. I know of a place that doesn't have incentivized audiologists, by the way. So it's huge, but ask questions and try to be a good consumer as much as possible. Hearing Health Associates, we think we have a great situation for consumers out there. Jennifer, I'm going to let you kind of talk about some of those benefits I mentioned. First of all, I'll mention the fact that we can see you very quickly. Usually, let's say this is Thursday, we could see you, I'm sure, almost guaranteed by the middle of next week.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've got openings Wednesday, Thursday next week.
Boom. That's nice, because we're not working on noses and throats. Okay. I've got a son that's got to have tubes put in his ear. Grandson is 2.5. They made an appointment in March and they'll see the doctor in May, so that's kind of a long time. So anyway, we have some of those kind of benefits. Also, and this is big, Hearing Health Associates, we are not going to give you hearing aids, push hearing aids on you and say, see what you can get from your insurance company. We will bill your insurance company ourselves. We will let you know exactly what they will cost. Okay, that's a good thing. And you'll get an extended trial period. Anywhere from 60 to 90 days, it all depends. So Jennifer here is more than happy to answer some questions now. Whatever comes up, whatever we can help you all with. Are there any questions, Jody? Or
Yeah, there are. We had a question. They were kind of curious what happens in the office when they come in for a hearing test.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. So after you fill out the 1-page paperwork that we have, which is how can we find you? How did you find us? I want to know about your ears, your hearing, what's bothering you, how long has it been bothering you, what kind of noises you've been exposed to, do you have ringing in your ears? And then the hearing test in my booth here is how soft you can hear the speech. Of course, there's the beep test, how clearly you hear the speech. And then we go over the results. What are you hearing and not hearing, and what can we help with that?
So do they get the
And
results?
that's usually about half hour to 45 minutes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
results are immediate. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
We like that immediate gratification, right? Get those results right away. That's it. That's good. So we had another question. Is there a lot of care that goes into taking care of hearing aids?
So I usually start with at least once a week. I should have got out a dummy to kind of go over them with a little cleaning brush. For some people, that's all I need. I have some people, if they don't clean them with that brush every night, they're kind of plugged up and they don't work well the next day. I like to see hearing aids at least once a year for just a good, thorough, deeper cleaning. In between that, there's a wax filter on most hearing aids. I have some people that have to replace that wax filter every few weeks. I have some people that never have to replace them. It just kind of depends on how quickly your ears build up wax. Those can be a little bit tricky, especially if your eyes and your fingers are not what they used to. So we work with you on that. And then, like I said, I aim for once a year. I do have some people that have to come see me twice a year, 3 times a year. We just need to deep clean the hearing aids a little more often than that. Some of those people are the ones that have a harder time changing their own wax filter.
Okay. Do you guys take care of wax buildup in patients' ears? Do you clean ears?
I can clean some ears.
Okay.
If it's pretty soft wax, not too deep in the ear canal, I don't mind scooping it out. I don't have irrigation here. I just have a little lighted scoop. If it's hardened up wax or it's down in there too deep, I refer you back to your physician for that.
Gotcha. Well, it looks like you guys have a lot of different locations across the metropolitan area. And I'll attach that information to the email that I'll send out to everyone who has signed up. And as always, we will send a link for those who weren't able to make the presentation today so they can watch it at their leisure, and feel free to share this information with anyone. I think it's some very valid, great information. I was pretty, I never thought really about the ibuprofen and acetaminophen. I'll have to think about that next time. I mean, all medications have side effects, so you kind of have to think about that before you take anything. And then I have seen it in family members with avoidance and that self-isolation.
You know, one of the things I tout is that we are the definitive authority on selective hearing between spouses, so we can help with that.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I certainly want folks to know and realize also that your hearing benefits, a lot of people, if you've got Medicare Advantage plans, you probably have hearing benefits you may not even realize that you have. And if you've had your hearing aids and it depends, it depends on how long you've had them, obviously. Sometimes a plan will allow you to replace your aids in 3 years, 5 years, 2 years. You never know. Millions of plans out there. But again, just having them checked, cleaned, your quality of life can really be enhanced and improved. And that's never a bad thing. So, and again, you don't have to worry about whether or not, insurance covers. Usually most insurance companies have a tiered situation where they've got bronze, silver, gold, bronze maybe, and this is fairly common. No out-of-pocket expense. Silver may be a little bit more, gold may be a little bit more. It all depends upon what your needs are, and Jennifer works with you to make sure that, that you're comfortable with what you got. And again, I like the fact that you will get anywhere between 30 and 45 days to try your hearing aids out. Because it's not like driving a car around the block or even over the weekend and saying, great, but you need to test them out in different situations, one-on-one, crowded rooms, that type of thing.
Right. That's great. Knowledge is power there. So
yes.
Perfect. Well, we thank you so much for your time today. Great topic and a lot of information.
Thank you very much, Jody. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, and I'll probably run into you in the community, and I really should come in and get my hearing checked. So we'll see. I know of a good place.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We're like we always say. I said we're here for you. It's important. It's a thing. It really is. You guys,
very, very pleasant, and I enjoyed it. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jody.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.